Right here, Shedeur Sanders was able to hook up on a deep pass play to Gage Larvadain. Nice catch right there as far as Gage coming down with that. Isaiah Bond sees something as well. Isaiah Bond is going to be wide open on the curl route. Deshaun Watson just simply overthrows it, as you guys can see right here in the footage. The deep ball to Malachi Corley, and he literally dropped the ball, man. I mean, it was a well-thrown ball. Shedeur Sanders put it on the backside, as you guys can see, and it hit him right in the chest. He just did not come down with it. I will say Shedeur Sanders is getting reps with the twos, mind you. Now, Deshaun Watson had reps in with the ones, and so we didn't have KC, Denzel, Boston, none of those guys. Right here, Shedeur Sanders was able to hook up on a deep pass play to Gage Larvadain. Nice catch right there as far as Gage coming down with that. Next play, we have team. Shedeur Sanders sees something at the line as far as cadence.
Before moving further, we're pushing for 1,000 subscribers here at Gridiron Ground. If you're enjoying our Browns and Shedeur Sanders coverage, hit that subscribe button and be part of the journey. Let's build this community together. Day 9 of Cleveland Browns training camp, and something happened on that practice field that nobody expected. Not the coaches, not the analysts, not even the fans standing on the sideline with their phones out trying to catch something worth posting. One quarterback, working with the backup unit, no top receivers anywhere near him, drops back and throws a ball so clean, so precise, so perfectly placed over the shoulder of a receiver running a deep route that people on the field actually stopped what they were doing. And here is the part that makes this story something worth your full attention. The guy throwing that ball was not the one getting the first team reps. He was not the one with the fully guaranteed contract. He was not the one Cleveland's front office spent years building their offense around. Meanwhile, on the other side of that same practice field, the starter with every single first-team rep available to him was putting the ball directly into the hands of his own secondary. Twice. One practice, two quarterbacks, two completely different stories playing out in real time. Drop a fire emoji in the comments right now if you already know where this is going, because what we are about to break down changes how you look at this entire quarterback room.
Denzel Ward intercepted Deshaun Watson in 11 on 11, a pass play that was overthrown to Isaiah Bond. And Deshaun Watson is leading everybody in interceptions, so it's no surprise, but we will take a look at that interception. All right, so as we see Deshaun Watson making a change at the line, he sees something. Isaiah Bond sees something as well. Isaiah Bond is going to be wide open on the curl route. Deshaun Watson just simply overthrows it, as you guys can see right here in the footage. Just simply overthrew it. Denzel Ward picks it off. Right here, I will say this was probably the throw of the day.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Before we get into the throws and the tape and the numbers, you need to understand the full picture of what Day 9 actually looked like, because the context here matters more than people are giving it credit for. Cleveland moved the entire practice indoors because of the weather. Rain was coming down hard enough outside that the coaching staff made the call to shift things inside, which already changes the dynamic of what you are evaluating. Indoor padless practice in the middle of August camp is not the same as being out on the grass with full pads and a live pocket collapsing around you. But the reps still count, the decisions still count, and the turnovers absolutely still count. Now here is where the setup gets interesting. Todd Monken made a specific rotation decision heading into Day 9. Shedeur Sanders got his reps with the twos. Deshaun Watson got every single rep with the ones. And on the surface, that looks like a pretty standard pecking order situation. Watson is the starter, he gets the first team, nothing to see here. But pull back one day, and that picture looks a little different. The day before Day 9, it was actually Shedeur getting the first team run in 7-on-7 situations. Monkin came out after that session and basically explained the reasoning directly. He said the plan was to rotate things, so both quarterbacks get at least one day working with the ones outside of their usual group. He wanted to see how each guy operated with different personnel around them, different communication challenges, different timing windows. That is not a throwaway detail. That is a head coach telling you he is genuinely trying to evaluate both of these quarterbacks in real conditions, not just handing Watson the keys and letting the rest of the competition play out for appearances. And that matters enormously for everything that happened on day 9. Because when you understand that Monkin is actively trying to stress test both of these guys in different situations, the results from that practice carry a weight that a typical day 9 of camp would not normally have. Gridiron Ground has been tracking this competition from the jump, and if you are new here, now is the time to get locked in because this is the kind of breakdown you are not going to get anywhere else. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you are here for every update as this thing develops through August. Now back to the field. Because the day did not start cleanly for either quarterback. Neither guy came out and immediately separated himself from the other. The coaches and reporters who were inside that facility after the session all essentially said the same thing when asked. Neither quarterback really stood out in a way that made the decision obvious. That was the general takeaway from inside the building. And on first glance at the stat lines, that assessment makes some sense. 3 quarterbacks, 3 interceptions spread across the group, inconsistency at every level of the depth chart. Dropped passes made things messier. Overthrows made things messier. Underthrows made things messier. It was the kind of practice where if you were just glancing at the surface level, you might walk away thinking nothing significant happened. But something significant absolutely happened. And it happened in a moment that most casual observers would have moved past without thinking twice about it. Because in the middle of all that noise, all that chaos, all those incomplete passes and errant throws flying around that indoor facility, one quarterback stepped into his drop, went through his read, trusted his receiver, and put a ball exactly where only his guy could catch it. Deep down the field, over the shoulder, perfectly weighted, perfectly timed. And the people standing on that practice field who watch quarterbacks throw footballs for a living stopped what they were doing to watch it come down. That throw came from the guy with the 2s. And what happened immediately before it and immediately after it is the real story worth telling here. Here is something that gets lost when people talk about prospect quarterbacks in competition situations. The miss does not define the evaluation. What you do after the miss does. Shedeur Sanders walked into day 9 and his very first notable rep of the entire session was an interception. He tried to get the ball to Jake Stahl, overthrew it, and Emmanuel came.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Down with the pick. Clean. Simple. His fault. No real argument to be made about coverage or a receiver running the wrong route or some freak bounce off a defender's hands. Shedeur put it in the wrong spot and the defense made him pay. That is how camp starts for the guy people are starting to pay serious attention to. 1 rep later, he drops back, goes deep to Malachi Clape on a back shoulder throw, puts the ball in a genuinely impressive spot and Clape drops it. Hit him in the chest, right where it needed to be, and it fell incomplete. So through 2 reps from a pure optics standpoint, Shedeur Sanders is sitting on 1 interception and 1 drop. That looks rough. That looks like the kind of start that gets talked about in a negative way on social media by the time practice wraps up. And that is exactly where lesser prospects fall apart. 1 bad rep bleeds into the next one. Confidence starts showing up in the mechanics. The decision-making gets a little slower, a little more hesitant. You stop trusting your arm and start playing scared. Anyone who has watched quarterbacks long enough at any level has seen it happen. Shedeur Sanders did not do that. Working with the 2s, no KC, no Denzel, no Boston, none of the top receiving options anywhere near him on that side of the practice field, Shedeur drops back and finds Gage Larvadain running a deep route down the field. The throw is not a lob. It is not a prayer. It is a laser, over the shoulder, clean carry, perfectly placed so that only Larvadain can come down with it, and Larvadain does exactly that. People on the practice field stop to watch it come down. That is not something that happens every day in training camp. Coaches and staff and reporters who are standing around watching reps all day long are not typically stopping what they are doing to track a ball in the air during an ordinary throw. When that happens, it means something cut through the routine in a way that grabbed attention without being asked to. The very next rep after that deep ball, Shedeur comes right back and finds tight end David Whiteheart working across the field on a well-timed anticipation throw. He did not wait for Whiteheart to come out of his break. He put the ball where Whiteheart was going to be. That is the kind of timing throw that requires a quarterback to trust his eyes, trust his read, and trust his arm all in the same half-second window. And Shedeur hit it. So walk that sequence back and think about what just happened. Interception on rep 1, drop on rep 2, deep laser on rep 3, anticipation strike on rep 4. That is a mental reset that most veteran quarterbacks struggle to execute consistently, let alone a guy still fighting to prove he belongs in a legitimate NFL quarterback competition. Todd Monken has talked specifically about operation being the first thing he looks for from any quarterback. Can you get everyone lined up, get the play off cleanly, no confusion at the line, no wasted timeouts because things broke down before the snap? Shedeur showed exactly that kind of operation on those last 2 reps. He diagnosed the defense, communicated what needed to be communicated, and
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
delivered the football in a way that put his receivers in position to make plays. That is not a fluke. That is a pattern that has been showing up across multiple days of this camp. And the timing of it, coming right after 2 things that could have wrecked a lesser prospect's confidence, is what made those 2 throws mean something bigger than the individual stats. But while Shedeur was resetting and delivering on the other side of that facility, something very different was happening with the guy running every first-team rep. This is the part of the story that Cleveland's front office does not love seeing when they pull up the practice film. Deshaun Watson had every single rep with the first team on day 9. Everyone. And that matters because when you are the guy getting all the ones, the standard for what your day looks like shifts dramatically. You are not being graded on a curve because of who is around you. You have Denzel Ward. You have the top receivers. You have the starting offensive line running your protection. The conditions are as good as they get in a training camp setting without it being an actual preseason game. And through the bulk of day 9 in Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, with all of that around him, threw 2 interceptions. The first one came in 11 on 11 team drills. Denzel Ward, one of the better cornerbacks in the entire AFC, read a route, got in position, and picked Watson clean. That one you can at least file under tough coverage from an elite defender. Denzel is going to make plays. That happens. The second one is the rep people are going to keep talking about. Watson gets to the line, sees something in the defense, makes a check. Isaiah Bond on the outside sees the same thing and adjusts his route accordingly, ending up on a curl. The coverage rotates in a way that leaves Bond wide open. Grass in front of him. Nobody within several yards of him. Watson has a receiver who has already won his route and is sitting there waiting for the football. He overthrows it, not by a little. He sails it right over Bond's head, and Denzel Ward, who is playing off the receiver, reads the entire thing from the moment the ball leaves Watson's hand and comes down with the interception. That is the throw that stings the most from an evaluation standpoint, not because of the pick itself, although 2 interceptions in one practice is never a good number. What stings is that the coverage did not beat Watson on that rep. Ball placement beat Watson. He had a receiver running wide open on a curl route with the defense completely out of position, and he missed the throw. That is the kind of rep a quarterback is supposed to cash in on every single time without thinking about it. Now, to be fair, Watson did have moments. Later in a 2-minute drill situation, he got outside the pocket, extended the play, and found Isaiah Bond again in stride for a nice gain down the field. He showed some of the athleticism Todd Monken mentioned when breaking down his skill set. And 2 touchdowns on the day is not nothing. 2 scores is 2 scores regardless of what else happened. But here is the reality that keeps coming back up when you look at this situation honestly. Watson is working with the top receivers, the top protection, the top everything that Cleveland's offense has available. And through the bulk of training camp across multiple days of evaluation, Watson is the one leading every...
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Quarterback on the roster in turnovers. Not Shedeur, not Gabriel, Watson. That is not a one-day blip. That is a running trend across the sample size Monkin has been building since camp opened. And when the guy with the fully guaranteed contract and every first-team rep available is the one leading the room in giveaways, that is a number that does not go away just because a 2-minute drill throw looked sharp. Cleveland is not a franchise that can afford free possessions right now. Their margin for error on offense is not wide enough to absorb turnover after turnover from the quarterback position and still expect to compete in games that matter. So every single time Watson puts the ball in the hands of his own defense in practice, it gets logged somewhere, and those logs have been piling up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the facility, the guy who got picked off on his very first rep of the day finished with 1 total interception across his entire session, and put together 2 of the cleanest throws anyone produced all day. And he was not the only other quarterback dealing with inconsistency either. Nobody in the broader conversation about this quarterback room has been paying enough attention to Gabriel. And after day 9, that needs to change slightly. Not because Gabriel had a great practice, but because what happened with him fills in the full picture of exactly what kind of day this was for the entire Cleveland quarterback group. Gabriel threw a pick of his own on day 9. Donovan McMillan tracked the ball down and came away with the interception. So across one single training camp practice, you had 3 quarterbacks and 3 interceptions spread across 3 different portions of the session. Watson with the 1s through 2, Shedeur with the 2s through 1. Gabriel mixed in his own. That is a lot of turnovers for a single afternoon of padless indoor work. And what that tells you is that day 9 was not a clean, smooth, everybody looked sharp kind of practice. It was messy. It was inconsistent. It was the kind of session where if you are an evaluator sitting in the film room afterward, you are circling a lot of plays with your pen. Gabriel finished 4 of 6 on the day, which looks fine on the surface. But 4 of 6 in limited reps with a pick mixed in does not exactly scream separation from the field. He has been part of this competition in the sense that he shows up in the depth chart conversation, but most of the reporting out of Cleveland through camp has pointed in one direction when it comes to Gabriel specifically. If Cleveland moves anyone from this quarterback room before the regular season, the reporting suggests Gabriel is the more likely trade chip. Not Watson, not Shedeur, Gabriel. That tells you something about how the front office is actually thinking about this situation behind the scenes. They are not looking at this as a 3-way race for the starting job. They are looking at it as a genuine 2-man evaluation with Gabriel as the movable piece. That matters for how you read everything happening at practice right now, because it means every data point from Watson and Shedeur carries real weight toward an actual decision, while Gabriel's reps are being evaluated on a slightly different track. Now zoom back out to the full picture of the day. 3 quarterbacks, 3 interceptions, drops from receivers across the board, overthrows, underthrows, and a weather situation that pushed everything inside. From a surface-level standpoint, you could look at day 9 and walk away thinking it was just a rough day for the whole position group and nothing particularly meaningful happened. But that framing ignores the one moment that cut through all of it. Because in the middle of all that mess, one quarterback went through a rough start and responded by throwing the single cleanest and most difficult ball of the entire practice session. Not Watson with the 1s, not Gabriel in his limited reps, the guy working with the backup unit. And that contrast, one quarterback producing the best throw of the day while working with the least talent around him, is exactly the kind of thing that does not show up clearly in the basic stat line, but absolutely shows up when a coaching staff sits down to watch the film afterward. The tape does not lie, and the tape from day 9 has one moment on it that is going to get watched more than anything else from that session, when Monkin and his staff go through it frame by frame. Gridiron Ground is the place to be if you want this kind of detailed breakdown all the way through August and into those preseason games. If you have been watching for a while and you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment. Hit it right now, because this story is only going to get bigger as the competition moves closer to a real decision. So we have talked about what happened on the field. Now let's talk about what the actual numbers say. Because the raw stats from day 9 line up with the eye test in a way that tells a very specific story, and that story is worth walking through carefully. Bold claim coming. The stat sheet from day 9 actually tells this story more clearly than most of the highlights do. And when you line up the numbers side by side and look at them honestly, the picture that emerges is not particularly flattering for the guy who was supposed to use this practice to cement his standing in the competition. Shedeur Sanders finished 9 of 15 on day 9. That works out to exactly 60% completion, 1 interception on the day, and that came early in the session before he settled in and found his rhythm. After that first pick, he came back and produced 2 of the cleanest throws of the entire practice. The back end of his stat line looks nothing like the front end, and that matters when you are thinking about consistency within a single session. Deshaun Watson finished 13 of 23 on the day with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception in the official stat line from team drills. That works out to just over 56% completion. And when you factor in the second interception that came outside of straight team drill reps, the picture gets slightly messier than the official numbers suggest. Let that sink in for a second. Shedeur Sanders working with the backup group, no top receivers around him, nothing from the first team playbook available to him, completed a higher percentage of his throws than the starting quarterback who had every first team rep and every top receiving option at his disposal. That is not a small detail. Completion percentage is not a perfect evaluator by any means, but it is a reflection of ball placement. And ball placement is the thing that separates quarterbacks who control games from quarterbacks who lose games in the fourth quarter, because they cannot consistently put the ball where it needs to be when everything is on the line. Now let's talk about the turnover trend, because this is where the conversation gets genuinely uncomfortable from Watson's perspective. Through the bulk of Cleveland's training camp across multiple days of evaluation, Watson is leading every single quarterback on the roster in total turnovers. That is not a one-day number. That is an accumulated stat across a significant sample of practice work. And it is the guy with the guaranteed contract and the first team reps holding that specific number, not a backup competing for a spot. Gabriel's 4 of 6 looks clean percentage-wise, but the interception and the limited reps keep him from being part of this specific comparison in a meaningful way. The real story is the head-to-head between Watson and Shedeur, because that is what this competition actually is right now. And the numbers through day 9 show one guy consistently protecting the ball better than the other, despite working with significantly less talent around him on every single rep. There is an argument to be made that Watson's 2 touchdowns on the day represent real production that Shedeur's stat line does not match. 2 scores is 2 scores, and that kind of efficiency in red zone or scoring situations matters in real games. That argument is not wrong. But here is the counter. Touchdowns in training camp padless 11 on 11 drills are not the same as touchdowns in a live game with a full defensive scheme working against you and a pass rush actually getting hands up. What translates from practice to game day more reliably than highlight throws is decision-making under pressure and ball security. And the running turnover numbers from this camp tell you which quarterback has been doing that better. The coaching staff is not looking at this through a highlight reel lens. They are not circling the 2-touchdown day and filing the rest away. They are building a comprehensive picture across every session, every rep, every throw. And the comprehensive picture through day 9 has a very specific story written into it that no single good day from Watson or bad day from Shedeur is going to completely overwrite. Todd Monken knows exactly what that picture looks like. And what he said publicly about both of these quarterbacks after practice reveals more about how the coaching staff is actually thinking than any single stat line ever could. When a head coach sits down after a practice session and unprompted starts breaking down a backup quarterback's specific skill set in detailed, technical language, that is not something you breeze past. That is a signal worth paying close attention to. Todd Monken laid it out directly after day 9, and the way he framed it tells you a lot about how far this competition has actually come from where it started. He began with operation. That was the first thing he brought up. Can a quarterback get to the line, get everyone aligned, get 11 men in the right spot, execute the play call without burning a timeout because something broke down before the snap? Monkin was direct about it. He said that is step 1 before anything else gets evaluated. And then he said something specific about Shedeur in that context. He said Shedeur has come a long way. Not he is learning it. Not he is getting there. He has come a long way. That is language a coach uses when he is describing genuine measurable progress from a player who has put in the work to get better at something that did not come naturally. For a quarterback competition that started with real questions about whether Shedeur could handle the pre-snap complexity of an NFL offense, that is a significant public statement from the man running the evaluation. Then Monkin got into the specific comparison between the two quarterbacks at the skill level. He acknowledged Watson has a little more athleticism. He said it plainly and moved on from it quickly. Then he turned to Shedeur and said Shedeur has a little stronger arm. That is a head coach publicly stating that his third-string quarterback has a stronger arm than the starter with the fully guaranteed contract. Read that again. Because in the context of a legitimate quarterback competition, that is not a throwaway comment. That is Monkin telling anyone paying attention that Shedeur Sanders brings something to this offense that Watson simply does not have in the same way. He went further. Monkin addressed the dual threat question directly because it has come up repeatedly in the broader conversation about how Shedeur fits in a modern NFL offense. And Monkin's answer was interesting. He said Shedeur is not what people would call a dual threat by today's standards. But then he added something. He said 20 years ago, Shedeur Sanders would absolutely have been labeled one. Translation: this is not a quarterback who is going to go out and rack up 60 rushing yards a game, but he is also not a statue standing in the pocket waiting to take a sack. He can move. He can escape. He can keep a defense from completely ignoring the quarterback run threat, which opens up windows in the passing game that do not exist when a defense knows with certainty the ball is never going anywhere except out of the pocket. Monkin backed that up with specifics. He mentioned using Shedeur on QB draws. He talked about the toughness and the power in his game. He was not speaking in vague terms about upside. He was describing how he actually plans to use Shedeur Sanders in real game situations within Cleveland's offensive system. That is the detail that changes how you read everything from day 9. Because when you watch Shedeur step up and throw that deep ball to Larvadain, and then immediately come back with the anticipation throw to Widart. And then you hear his own head coach explain that those kinds of plays are already being designed specifically around his strengths. The story shifts. This is not a coaching staff humoring a backup through training camp while they wait to hand the job back to the presumed starter. This is a coaching staff actively building an offensive framework around a player they clearly see as a legitimate option. And none of that happened in a vacuum. It happened on a day when the starter threw 2 interceptions working with the best talent on the roster. The contrast could not be drawn more clearly if someone scripted it. But before anyone starts making plans around what all of this means, there is a very necessary reality check that needs to happen. Let's be honest about what this competition actually is and what it is not, because the moment one practice session starts getting treated as definitive proof of anything, the whole conversation loses its foundation. Deshaun Watson is still the starter on paper. He has the first team reps, the fully guaranteed contract, and the institutional weight of being the quarterback. Cleveland's front office made one of the most controversial roster decisions in recent franchise history to acquire. None of that disappears because of what happened on a padless indoor Thursday in August. And the reporting from inside that building has been consistent on one specific point throughout all of this. Cleveland is not shopping Watson. They are not fielding calls about moving him. This is not a situation where the front office has quietly decided to move on and is using the competition as cover to manage the transition. By all accounts from people actually inside the facility, this is a real, genuine evaluation running through the bulk of August, with the 3 preseason games serving as the actual proving ground where the decision gets made. That is important context for everything we have talked about today. One practice, even a practice with as many interesting data points as day 9, is one data point. The coaching staff is not making a decision off one session. They never were going to, and nobody credible inside that building is suggesting otherwise. What is also true is that Shedeur Sanders does not need the competition to be decided tomorrow. The way he is performing through this camp, the way his numbers stack up against Watson's, and the way Monkin is talking about him publicly, all of that is building something. Each practice adds another layer to the evaluation. Each session where Watson piles another turnover onto his camp total and Shedeur goes out and produces the best throw of the day with backup talent around him, the picture gets a little clearer. Gridiron ground is where you come back for every update as this builds toward those preseason games. If you have been watching since the beginning of this camp breakdown series and you still have not hit subscribe, this is your moment. The people who are already subscribed are going to have the full picture of this competition in real time. Do not miss that. Now back to the reality check. Gabriel is part of this equation too, but not in the way most people assume. The reporting suggests Gabriel is the more likely trade piece if Cleveland decides to move someone before the regular season. That means this competition, as far as the actual starting job goes, is Watson versus Shedeur. And when you frame it that way, the numbers and the film from day 9 carry a weight that they would not carry in a typical 3-way depth chart situation. One thing that has not gotten enough attention in the broader conversation is what the turnover trend means from a practical standpoint. Watson leading every quarterback in camp turnovers is not just a bad statistic. It is a reflection of something that shows up in real games in very specific and very damaging ways. Turnovers change field position. Turnovers shift momentum. Turnovers in close games are often the single deciding factor between winning and losing. And a quarterback who has spent the majority of training camp giving the defense free possessions more than anyone else in the room is carrying that pattern with him into whatever evaluation comes next. The preseason games are where everything gets real. 3 games, live pass rushers, live defensive schemes, real stakes for every player on that roster fighting for a roster spot. That is the environment where these 2 quarterbacks are going to have to show what they can actually do outside the controlled chaos of camp sessions. And what day 9 showed is that Shedeur Sanders is not waiting for that environment to start making his case. He is making it right now, 1 rep at a time, with whoever is lined up around him. That kind of consistency in building a case quietly and without the top talent or the first team spotlight is exactly the foundation that real quarterback competitions are decided on. Where things stand after all of this is the final piece of the story. After day 9, the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition looks like this. Deshaun Watson is still the man with the first-team reps and the guaranteed money behind him. But the gap between what he has been showing in practice and what the guy behind him has been showing is not as wide as the depth chart would suggest. And in some specific measurable areas, the numbers actually flip. Watson completed just over 56% of his throws on day 9, while leading the entire quarterback room in training camp turnovers. Shedeur completed 60% of his throws while working with backup-level talent around him on every single rep. He produced the single cleanest throw of the entire practice session. He got a public breakdown from his own head coach, explaining exactly how Cleveland plans to scheme around his specific strengths. And he did all of that after getting picked off on the very first rep of his day, and watching a drop happen in front of him on the very next one. That is not a narrative built on one lucky throw. That is a pattern that has been developing across multiple days of this camp and is becoming harder to dismiss with each session. Now, something worth sitting with as this competition moves toward the preseason games. The question that keeps coming up in every conversation about this situation is whether Watson can recapture what he was before the injuries. He was one of the better quarterbacks in the AFC at his peak. There is no argument against that. The arm was there. The athleticism was there. The decision-making in live games was genuinely impressive at times. But two Achilles tears change a quarterback. Not always in the ways that show up immediately in physical evaluation. Sometimes the change is in the processing speed. Sometimes it shows up in the hesitation before committing to a throw. Sometimes it shows up as a tendency to float balls over the middle rather than driving them with conviction. And sometimes, in training camp, it shows up as 2 interceptions in one session with the first team around you, including one where the receiver was wide open and the ball just went over his head. Nobody is saying Watson cannot get back to where he was. Nobody credible is making that claim. But the clock on that evaluation is not infinite. Cleveland needs to know what it has at quarterback before the season opens. And the competition they have been running through August is designed to give them that answer through real evidence rather than reputation or contract status. What makes this specific competition genuinely interesting from a football standpoint is that both quarterbacks bring something legitimate. Watson's athleticism and experience with a full NFL playbook are real. Shedeur's arm strength and his operation, which Monkin just said has come a long way, are equally real. This is not a situation where one guy is clearly the better quarterback, and the coaching staff is just going through the motions of a competition for appearances. The preseason games are going to tell the real story. 3 live games against real defenses with real pressure and real consequences. That is where the film gets definitive. That is where completion percentage stops being a training camp number and starts being a reflection of what happens when someone is actually trying to take your head off. Shedeur Sanders has made his case clearly through 9 days of camp. The deep ball to Larvadain, the anticipation throw to Whiteart, the mental reset after the early pick, the turnover numbers that compare favorably to the guy with the starting job, Monkin's specific public breakdown of how Cleveland plans to use him in real games. All of that is on the table right now, and the 3 preseason games are going to either validate what we have seen building through camp or give us a completely new set of data to work from. Either way, this is not a story that is close to finished. This quarterback competition is alive. The decision is real, and Cleveland's front office, whatever they say publicly, knows exactly how interesting this situation has become. What happens next is the most important chapter of this entire story, and that chapter has not been written yet. Here is where everything lands after day 9 of Cleveland Browns training camp. One quarterback threw 2 interceptions working with the first team and every top receiving option available to him. Another quarterback got picked off on his opening rep, watched a drop happen on the very next throw, and responded by producing the cleanest and most difficult throw of the entire session with backup talent around him. The numbers back up the eye test. The head coach backed up the numbers with his own words, and the coaching staff is actively building specific packages around the guy who is not supposed to be the starter yet. This competition is real. The evaluation is real. And the 3 preseason games coming up are going to add a layer of evidence to everything we have already seen in camp that will make the final decision either very obvious or extremely complicated for Cleveland's front office. The thing worth carrying with you beyond this video is a simple question. In a quarterback competition where one guy is leading the room in turnovers and the other guy is leading the room in the best individual throws of each practice session, how long does the depth chart stay the same? Nobody has the answer to that yet, but Gridiron Ground is going to be here every step of the way, breaking it down in detail as this thing moves toward a real decision. Drop your take in the comments below. One word, one emoji. Wherever you stand on this competition right now, let it be known.
Everything that you're looking at.
Are they similar in what you like? Would you need 2 different game plans for
I wouldn't think so. Deshaun's got a little bit more athleticism. Shedeur's got a little stronger arm, I would say. But what I would say was Shedeur Sanders anymore is not considered a dual threat.
Right.
But 20 years ago he would have been. He's not a slug.
Yeah. No.
You can run things with him. You can run QB draw. He's going to escape. He's got some toughness and some power. Is he Lamar? No.